Hello everyone, it's me Evan, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be taking a look at two different small block ships. Hey guys, so because this is a very long video, I've divided it up into three sections. Um, that's, so if you check in the description, I will have marked the section where I talk about the Bicu-Cor. And then the next section is the Hornet Heavy Gunship. And then the final section is a little mock battle between the two of them. So yeah, enjoy, and I'll get you back to the video. I've designed these two, I'd say, about like a year apart from each other. It's been a while since I've actually recorded anything that I've done in Space Engineers, but they're both small block ships, as you can see by the scale of the blocks around me here. And this particular ship is called the Bicu-Cor. It's a rather beautiful ship, I think. It's kind of, I mean, beautiful in the way that only a spaceship can be. But it's got this very nice big observation bridge. You can see a lot from here. You can even look down. But that's not all of the interior. The interior is fully pressurized, as you can see. We got high O2 and it's warm, courtesy of some nice little oxygen dispensers. But yeah, so we go back through here. You can see we've got some stuff. This thing is set up for thrust gravity. I believe that would turn it on, and these adjust how much thrust is being put out. But thrust gravity is not super important, just because for the most part you can just walk around. Now if we want to go down a floor, we can go through here, but I'd say let's just explore the airlock first. It's rather small. It's not the kind that pressurizes itself, so on goes the helmet. You can see we're out here. I'll go over the exterior in just a little bit. Let's finish our little interior tour, and then we'll go out and check out the weapons complement and the capacity of the ship. So if we go down a floor, there's a ladder here, but I refuse to use it. Well, let's see here. Because the problem with the ladders is that they don't put you on the floor, so you kind of have to navigate down with thrusters anyway. But we come into this little junction area. This goes down to the third floor, which is sort of more of a hallway than a floor in itself. But if we go through here, we've got windows that look down out into space. You can see faintly reactors in there. And then these are our large cargo containers. There should be 3 access points. And you can see the other 3 on the other side of the ship. Sort of this soft purple lighting throughout. We come here to the medical room. We got 2 cryopods and a survival kit. Very simple, basic little room. And then our last little floor is just this very small little area down where the fuel is stored. And then this has no airlock, so you better make sure you close the door up there before you get out. Yeah, you can see through here, there's some hydrogen generators, and we've got some reactors in there as well. So, there. Now that we're outside the ship, we can start looking at the weapons complement and the various thrusters mounted on here. You can see we've got a couple of deactivated thrusters here. These are actually for the artificial gravity, sort of thrust gravity type thing. So because this ship is arrayed with the decks going in the lengthwise direction on the ship, that means that our thrusters, unfortunately, have to point down to provide proper thrust gravity. Essentially, just turn off dampeners, turn those on, And as long as your speed limit is higher than average, you do want to use a speed mod for this kind of thing, you will get a consistent thrust gravity, which is important for a little small grid like this, which can't house its own gravity generator. But you can see the weapons complement is quite sizable. We've got, I think, 4 Gatling turrets. Yes, there's 4 Gatling turrets, one there, and 2 here on the top. And then I believe we have 6 missile turrets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the firing arcs on these are not great. The one with the most coverage is definitely the ones here pointing out on the sides, and these ones on the top. The rest of them are sort of focused forward. The whole thing is indeed plumbed up for survival as well, so if we clear out this patch, you can see we've got plenty of connection point. And then also we appear to have removed a cargo container accidentally. Yes, we've got full large-scale piping going through these little guys. All the missile turrets. And that feeds back into these main containers here. It's got lots of fuel, so usually you don't need to pack ice because of the amount of hydrogen fuel it carries on board. And then you've also got some ion thrusters just for emergency purposes, really. So let's replace that armor here and here, and move on to our second small block ship. This is the second small block ship on our list, and on our extensive list of 2. We're going to start with the interior first, just like with the last one. This particular ship is dubbed the Hornet Heavy Gunship. You can see on our first floor we've got a decent airlock, and this is the kind that pressurizes itself. So if we just sort of vent it and then close it, there you go. And then we've got 4 cryopods and access to the main storage of the vessel. You can navigate this whole thing in 0G without having to use your jetpack. In gravity, you will have to use the jetpack because there's no ladders. So there's that. But hopefully you're not using this in a gravity well, because it just doesn't have a great time about it. Unless it's a very small moon or something like that. But anyway, let's continue on. We got our 4 cryopods, and then there's this little ramp. You do have to be crouching to go through these sort of short tunnels. You can see we've skipped the middle floor because that's where that's where the command is. But up here we've got a emergency beacon and then 2 timer blocks, and they're sort of protected by armor pieces so that they don't get destroyed. Even though this is forward on the ship, they very rarely get knocked out, which is quite good. So yeah, then we've got a cargo container here, medium cargo for personal belongings and stuff like that. But it is only plumbed up for large or for small tubing, so you've been warned. A lot of you'll notice a lot of the straight pipes in this ship are all small cargo containers. This was a habit I picked up from a player known as Wasnab and or Zell. Yeah, there's just some people I met in Space Engineers, and they enlightened me to the knowledge that small cargo containers are really great, because if you look at the build costs, they're pretty similar, other than the inclusion of construction components, or I guess less construction components, but you do need a computer and a display. But you get free storage out of it, basically. Which means that any ship that is built in this way will have easily much more storage than a lot of larger purpose-built cargo ships. So if we hop into this seat here, there are 2 little lights down there, and we got some standard panels just to show you what's going on. Oh, meteor storm. Well, actually, that might be a great opportunity to show you what timer block in channel not or in slot 9 does. So if we hit this, you'll notice that this light comes on in the cockpit, like that, little orange light there. And the turrets, I don't know if the, yep, there it goes. The turrets are switched into a defensive mode where they will only target missiles and meteors. So they'll actually ignore grids entirely, and they will even target neutral sources of rockets. So there's that. And then also, our second timer block, the one in slot 2, opens up our landing struts. You can see there's 8 of them, and they have magnetic plates on them. They're a bit floppy, but with all 8 of them, they have extremely strong connection to things. If you haven't seen my video about flinging this thing off of a spin station at like 150 meters a second, then you ought to check that out. It's kind of cool. But yeah, these things could stand up to quite some punishment, a lot more than I expected. And then, of course, you can see one of the main features of this vessel, which is our enormous, large hydrogen engine. That big, beautiful drive plume. Anyway, this ship is certainly not light, though, so don't expect tons of acceleration out of it. It can do like 100 meters a second in about 12 seconds. So, but you have to be using both this engine and some of the hidden engines inside of the build. But anyway, now that we're on the outside, we can see we've got a decent coverage of armor. There's a lot more plating under here in the nose to kind of protect the crew compartment. There are a bunch of thin armor plates covering most of the crew compartment areas. And in fact, a lot of the mid area here as well. Some of this is actually to hide thrusters underneath to create a flush looking design that also just has thrusters inside. So some of that's just for show. We've got some retro thrusters hidden in there. I think it looks kind of cool when they fire because they just sort of fire out of these slots in the armor. We've got a little tiny thruster there. What else? I think yeah, and then we got some big retros up here with a camera right on the point. You can see we've got 8 Gatling guns. And these are, of course, the Gatling guns that are switched into defensive mode when you click that little button. We've got 4 missile turrets, and these are all actually backed up by welders, so they're much more durable. And then we've got our big industrial hydrogen thruster. The mixing of these grids is a bit scuffed, so you will get clang sounds, but as long as you don't violently yaw the ship, you should be fine. So there's a reason that I went to this ship last, and it's because the Bicu-Cor is over there, and it's being owned by the Space Pirates. The reason I'm controlling this ship is because I think I know who's going to win this fight. I have way more Gatling turrets here, and they're in far better positions. Their fields of fire are much better. I can focus all of them actually forward, I think, if they're far enough away. Like at the outermost range, like 600 meters, if I point the nose directly at the target, I think all the turrets can engage, with the possible exception of the middle line of turrets. But even then, you just angle a bit, and you're usually fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over and demonstrate the abilities of this little guy. So let's hit it. And starting up the main drive. Just look at that drive plane, it's just huge. 0 thrust. Defense mode's not on, good. Shoot, they were ready for us. See, we took quite a bit of damage amidships, but that's fine. Talk with those guns, they're not actually shooting at anything. You can hear the clang monsters very angry. That was a very unlucky hit. It kind of shredded up our the mid works there. If we just keep going. For the best thrust, you do want to use forward and the engine, just so that, let's give them a good side here. Also, because you're a long ship, you can sort of swing it around, and it will cause them to miss a lot. Missiles, anyway. Enemy missiles will miss a lot more when you're, like, yawing the ship back and forth. You can usually avoid a lot of hits that way, just because the ship's so darn long. Oh, yeah. Shoot. Those ones hit. Solid. Spin. It's actually quite a viable strategy. This thing has no decoys, by the way, so when those enemy missiles fail to hit, that's basically just because you can spin the ship. Like so. If I put some decoys in the nose, this kind of maneuver would probably be even more effective. So I might make an updated version. There's a couple different things that need to be changed up. For instance, there's some heavy armor that is not really needed. Some slow down here. Sorry, most of this fight's in darkness. The asteroid was not cast in shadow like this when I first intended to go. I believe the fight is basically over at this point. We're not taking... You can see that we've definitely vented atmosphere. There's a couple little holes in the crew compartment. But, other than that, we're basically fine. Because of the triple layered plating with the standard block and then the two light plates, it actually holds together really well, which protects the crew compartment from a lot of damage. So almost like a spall shield. Yeah, you can see the outer... the piece inside is not shared by the outer systems. You can see that basically connection to the upper section of the ship has been severed. You could bring it back pretty easily, but since there's so much inbuilt cargo capacity, these turrets would be able to keep firing for a long time even after that, considering that they've got access to big cargo containers like this up in the forward section of the ship. You can see what I was talking about, though, when I meant that there's quite a bit of stuff in between the front of the ship. As you can see, everything's been scalped from it to the actual crew compartment, which is all the way down here. So I could put some decoy blocks up there to increase the effectiveness, and you could too, if you really wanted to. We've got a lot of turrets still active. Really unfortunate how heavily this ripped into the amidship section, but I think they came out much worse for it if we can actually find them. Where are they? All we can see burning debris floating around. You know, I'm just gonna Give me a sec here. Oh. Well, that's what's left of the ship. The Bicu-Cor is a good small block ship, but it doesn't really stand a chance against a purpose-built warship like this. Now, of course, this purpose-built warship does not stand a chance against any serious large grid, or even a moderate large grid with heavy armor. So do take that in mind when you're using it. But overall, this thing, I'm very pleased with this thing's combat performance. It can really punch above its size quite easily. So if we kind of look at the Bicu-Cor, in comparison to this ship, the Bicu-Cor is not as long, but it's got a lot more tonnage to it. I'd consider both of them sort of gunboat or corvette type vessels, but this guy is clearly much more hooked up for cargo carrying with these big cargo containers. So there you go. Battered but not broken. See, our main drive's still good. Everything's fine, and yeah. So I'll have both of these out on the workshop. Well, not the workshop. I haven't been able to get my Steam workshop to function, but mod.io should work just fine for these. And I'll have links in the description below if you want to check either of these out. Be sure to check out my Discord channel, where I sometimes post, and other people who mostly brick rig stuff at the moment. But yeah, I'll put a link for that in the description below as well. I hope you guys all have a good day, and I will see you next time. Later.